Guys, so I'm back again and I wanted to go over just quickly how you give report. And a lot of people get really intimidated by this because there's a lot to know depending on what floor you're on and what's going on. So of course everyone gets very excited when you're giving a report to the same person you got report from or gave report to the day before because they have a general idea of the patient history. Now if you've got a patient that has a long history, things can of course get a little bit more complicated. But the first thing I try to do before whoever I'm giving a report to even arrives, if I've got time, I have a little cheat sheet basically, or my brain, that gives me all of the information about my patient. I've got, their age, I've got their diagnosis, any treatments or devices they're using, their vent settings if, they're on a vent, along with their ET tube size and the insertion depth, all of those important pieces of information. So of course you update this information as things change throughout your shift or any important events that happen so that you can pass those things along and report. But just in case, because sometimes things get a little bit hectic, before my shift ends, when I've got a couple of minutes, if I have a couple of minutes, I go back through to review my patient charts and make sure I didn't forget to add anything to this list. Because to be honest, a lot of us just end up reading the basic things off of our little brains anyways. Basically, the way you give report changes a little bit from unit to unit, of course, and you'll learn kind of, the different personalities you're giving report to. Some people will just sit there and you can't tell if they're listening or not, but that's okay. You're doing your job and just give your report. So the first thing, of course, you want to do your patient's diagnosis, any important history they may have. So let's say your patient came in with pneumonia, but they also have a history of COPD or asthma, or they had a pneumonectomy at some point, or a partial pneumonectomy, or any type of history that could kind of make some type of difference in their hospital stay. And then once you give their diagnosis and their history, you want to add anything that's important in, their chart that you saw. Maybe, okay, well, their x-ray has worsened or their x-ray has improved, and talk about what's worse or what's improved. Okay, so let's say you're giving a patient CPT. And you can say their right lower lobe is really consolidated, so you really want to make sure you focus on that side. Of course, they're going to do their job and they're going to review the chart also, but if there's anything that you find really important or like you need to tell them, let them know. It's your report time. It's the time to do it. And then, of course, if your patient's intubated, you want to talk about what vent settings they're on, the size of the ET tube, the insertion depth that you have seen all night, and all of these things are important because one, especially the insertion depth, if whoever's going in there sees that it's at a different depth, either the tube could have moved or something could have happened. So it's important for them to know these things. And again, they can see that throughout your charting. But sometimes when things get a little bit hectic, let's say they get called right to a patient's room that's intubated and they haven't had a chance to open up their charting and review anything yet. It's nice for them to have that information. And then also, especially for intubated patients, you want to talk about, if you can, what type of secretions you're getting from them. So let's say I have a patient and I tell you, okay, well, I'm getting tan, thick secretions from the ET tube. I'm not really getting a lot orally, blah, blah, blah. And then your coworker goes in there and they suction and they get bloody secretions. They know that there's been a change. So again, they'll see that in charting, but same thing, they kind of have it in the back of their mind already. Okay, this isn't a normal for this patient. Just for a quick example of a rundown for maybe a patient that's recently been intubated, you could say, all right, Mrs. Jones is 68 years old. She came in with pneumonia, also has a history of COPD. She ended up being intubated early this morning with a 7.0 tube. It is 23 at the lip, and we ended up putting her on volume control, a rate of 16,500 PIPA 5, and we've weaned down her oxygen to about 50% now. So when I suction her, I am getting thick tan secretions from her, and she also has a tendency to fight the vent. So before you go in and do CPT or suctioning, just coordinate with the nurse, let them know, because she does get a little riled up and can get desynchronous with the vent anytime you do any of that. Again, that's just another, example of not only giving a report, but adding an important piece of information that your coworker might want to know. So if they go in there to suction the patient or to do CPT if it's ordered, then, they're going to know that the patient's going to get a little riled up, and maybe you need to talk with your nurse about sedation before you start those treatment options that we have for them. So a report's pretty simple. It kind of changes depending on the unit you're in, but overall it's basic. You want, your patient's history, why they're there, of course, any treatments, any devices, and anything unique that's going on. So it's just very basic. Breathe while you're giving a report, and if someone's asking you questions and you don't know, just tell them, you know what, I'm not sure about that, but we can look that up. Because a lot of hospitals do have a policy where you're supposed to give a report in front of a computer or in front of a patient room, so that in cases like that you can access that information. And whether it's that you don't know because you didn't run into that issue, or because perhaps it slipped your mind because you've been on a crazy 12-hour shift, it happens. Not everybody gives a perfect report every single time, and that's okay. It's just part of the process. But if you guys have any questions at all, definitely let me know. Leave me comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow, and I will talk to you guys next time.